If you can cut your mind free of what other people do and say, of what you've said or done, of the things that you're afraid will happen, the impositions of the body that contains you and the breath within, and what the whirling chaos sweeps in from outside, so that the mind is freed from fate, brought to clarity, and lives life on its own reconnaissance, doing what's right, accepting what happens, and speaking the truth. If you can cut free of impressions that cling to the mind, free of the future and the past, can make yourself, as Empedocles says, a sphere rejoicing in its perfect stillness, and concentrate on living what can be lived, which means the present. Then you can spend the time you have left in tranquility, and in kindness, and at peace with the spirit within you. To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. It's unfortunate that this has happened. No, it's fortunate that this has happened, and I've remained unharmed by it, not shattered by the present or frightened of the future. It could have happened to anyone, but not everyone could have remained unharmed by it. Why treat the one as a misfortune rather than the other as fortunate? Can you really call something a misfortune that doesn't violate human nature? Or do you think something that's not against nature's will can violate it? But you know what its will is. Does what's happened keep you from acting with justice, generosity, self-control, sanity, prudence, honesty, humility, straightforwardness, and all the other qualities that allow a person's nature to fulfill itself? So remember this principle: when something threatens to cause you pain, the thing itself was no misfortune at all. To endure it and prevail is great good fortune. But death and life, success and failure, pain and pleasure, wealth and poverty, all these happen to good and bad alike, and they are neither noble or shameful, and hence neither good nor bad. Soon you'll be ashes or bones. I'm your name at most, and even that is just a sound, an echo. The things we want in life are empty, stale, and trivial. Dogs snarling at each other, quarreling children laughing, and then bursting into tears a moment later. Trust, shame, justice, truth gone from the earth and only found in heaven. Why are you still here? Sensory objects are shifting and unstable. Our senses dim and easily deceived. The soul itself a decoction of the blood. Fame in a world like this is worthless. And so, wait for it patiently, annihilation or metamorphosis. And until that time comes, what? Honor and revere the gods. Treat human beings as they deserve. Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. Remember, nothing belongs to you but your flesh and blood, and nothing else is under your control. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Hippocrates cured many illnesses and then fell ill and died. The Chaldeans predicted the deaths of many others. In due course their own hour arrived. Alexander, Pompey, Caesar, who utterly destroyed so many cities, cut down so many thousand foot and horse in battle, they too departed this life. Heraclitus often told us the world would end in fire, but it was moisture that carried him off. He died smeared with cowshit. Democritus was killed by ordinary vermin. Socrates by the humankind. And you boarded, you set sail, you've made the passage. Time to disembark. If it's for another life, well, there's nowhere without gods on that side either. If to nothingness, then you no longer have to put up with pain and pleasure, or go on dancing attendance on this battered crate. your body so much inferior to that which serves it. One is mind and spirit, the other earth and garbage. Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil. Begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil. But for my part I have long perceived the nature of good and its nobility, the nature of evil and its meanness, and also the nature of the culprit himself, who is my brother not in the physical sense, but as a fellow creature similarly endowed with reason and a share of the divine. Therefore, none of those things can injure me, for nobody can implicate me in what is degrading. Neither can I be angry with my brother or fall foul of him, for he and I were born to work together, like a man's 2 hands, feet or eyelids, or the upper and lower rows of his teeth. To obstruct each other is against nature's law, and what is irritation or aversion but a form of obstruction? Casting aside other things, hold to the precious few. And besides, bear in mind that every man lives only the present, which is an indivisible point, and that all the rest of his life is either past or is uncertain. Brief is man's life, and small the nook of the earth where he lives. Brief, too, is the longest posthumous fame, buoyed only by a succession of poor human beings who will very soon die and who know little of themselves, much less of someone who died long ago. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of, if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm. So you were born to feel nice, instead of doing things and experiencing them. Don't you see the plants, the birds, the ants and spiders and bees going about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can, and you're not willing to do your job as a human being? Why aren't you running to do what your nature demands? You don't love yourself enough, or you love your nature too, and what it demands of you. Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. Cold or warm, tired or well-rested, despised or honored, dying or busy with other assignments. Because dying, too, is one of our assignments in life. There as well, to do what needs doing. Look inward. Don't let the true nature of anything elude you. Before long, all existing things will be transformed, to rise like smoke, assuming all things become one, or be dispersed in fragments, to move from one unselfish act to another with God in mind. Only there, delight and stillness. When jarred, unavoidably, by circumstances, revert at once to yourself, and don't lose the rhythm more than you can help. You'll have a better grasp of the harmony if you keep going back to it. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is to persist in one's own self-deception and ignorance. Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit. To wonder what so and so is doing and why, or what he is saying, or thinking, or scheming. In a word, anything that distracts you from fidelity to the ruler within you means a loss of opportunity for some other task. Concentrate every minute like a Roman, like a man, on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice, and on freeing yourself from all other distractions. Yes, you can if you do everything as if it were the last thing you were doing in your life, and stop being aimless. Stop letting your emotions override what your mind tells you. Stop being hypocritical, self-centered, irritable. You see how few things you have to do to live a satisfying and reverent life. If you can manage this, That's all even the gods can ask of you. Do not disturb yourself by picturing your life as a whole. Do not assemble in your mind the many and varied troubles which have come to you in the past and will come again in the future, but ask yourself with regard to every present difficulty, what is there in this that is unbearable and beyond endurance? You would be ashamed to confess it. And then remind yourself that it is not the future or what is past that afflicts you, but always the present, and the power of this is much diminished if you take it in isolation and call your mind to task if it thinks that it cannot stand up to it when taken on its own. Is your cucumber bitter? Throw it away. Are there briars in your path? Turn aside. That is enough. Do not go on and say, why were things of this sort ever brought into this world? Neither intolerable nor everlasting if thou bearest in mind that it has its limits, and if thou addest nothing to it in imagination. Pain is either an evil to the body, then let the body say what it thinks of it, or to the soul, but it is in the power of the soul to maintain its own serenity and tranquility. Men seek retreats for themselves, houses in the country, seashores, and mountains, and thou too art wont to desire such things very much. But this is altogether a mark of the most common sort of men, for it is in thy power whenever thou shalt choose to retire into thyself. For nowhere either with more quiet or more freedom from trouble does a man retire than into his own soul, particularly when he has within him such thoughts that by looking into them he is immediately in perfect tranquility. And I affirm that tranquility is nothing else than the good ordering of the mind. Constantly then give to thyself this retreat, and renew thyself, and let thy principles be brief and fundamental, which, as soon as thou shalt recur to them, will be sufficient to cleanse the soul completely, and to send the bag free from all discontent with the things to which thou returnest. For with what art thou discontented? With the badness of men. Recall to thy mind this conclusion, that rational animals exist for one another, and that to endure is a part of justice, and that men do wrong involuntarily, and consider how many already, after mutual enmity, suspicion, hatred, and fighting, have been stretched dead, reduced to ashes, and be quiet at last. But perhaps thou art dissatisfied with that which is assigned to thee out of the universe. Recall to thy recollection this alternative. Either there is providence or atoms, the fortuitous concurrence of things, or remember the arguments by which it has been proved that the world is a kind of political community, and be quiet at last. But perhaps corporeal things will still fasten upon thee. Consider then further that the mind mingles not with the breath, whether moving gently or violently, when it has once drawn itself apart and discovered its own power. And think also of all that thou hast heard and assented to about pain and pleasure, and be quiet at last. But perhaps the desire of the thing called fame will torment thee. See how soon everything is forgotten, and look at the chaos of infinite time on each side of the present, and the emptiness of applause, and the changeableness and want of judgment in those who pretend to give praise, and the narrowness of the space within which it is circumscribed, and be quiet at last. For the whole earth is a point, and how small a nook in it is this thy dwelling, and how few are there in it, and what kind of people are they who will praise thee? Don't let yourself forget how many doctors have died, furrowing their brows over how many deathbeds, how many astrologers, after pompous forecasts about others' ends, how many philosophers, after endless disquisitions on death and immortality, how many warriors, after inflicting thousands of casualties themselves, how many tyrants, after abusing the power of life and death atrociously, as if they were themselves immortal, how many whole cities have met their end, Helice, Pompeii, Herculaneum, and countless others, and all the ones you know yourself, one after another, one who laid out another for burial, and was buried himself, and then the man who buried him, all in the same short space of time. In short, know this: human lives are brief and trivial. Yesterday a blob of semen, tomorrow embalming fluid, ash. To pass through this brief life as nature demands, to give it up without complaint, like an olive that ripens and falls, praising its mother, thanking the tree it grew on. You need to avoid certain things in your train of thought. Everything random, everything irrelevant, and certainly everything self-important or malicious. You need to get used to winnowing your thoughts so that if someone says, "What are you thinking about?" you can respond at once and truthfully that you are thinking this or thinking that. Asia and Europe, tiny corners of the cosmos. Every sea, a mere drop. Mount Athos, a lump of dirt. The present moment is the smallest point in all eternity. All is microscopic, changeable, disappearing. All things come from that faraway place, either originating directly from that governing part which is common to all, or else following from it as consequences. So even the gaping jaws of the lion, deadly poison, and all harmful things like thorns or an oozing bog are products of that awesome and noble source. Do not imagine these things to be alien to that which you revere, but turn your reason to the source of all things. Whenever you want to cheer yourself up, consider the good qualities of your companions. For example, the energy of one, the modesty of another, the generosity of yet another, and some other quality of another. For nothing cheers the heart as much as the images of excellence reflected in the character of our companions, all brought before us as fully as possible. Therefore, keep these images ready at hand. A man should always have these two rules in readiness. First, to do only what the reason of your ruling and legislating faculties suggest for the service of man. Second, to change your opinion whenever anyone at hand sets you right and unsettles you in an opinion. But this change of opinion should come only because you are persuaded that something is just or to the public advantage, not because it appears pleasant or increases your reputation. Everything is only for a day, both that which remembers and that which is remembered. Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom thyself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change things which are, and to make new things like them. For everything that exists is in a manner the seed of that which will be. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone. What harms us is to persist in self-deceit and ignorance. Because your own strength is unequal to the task, do not assume that it is beyond the powers of man. But if anything is within the powers and province of man, believe that it is within your own compass also. It is within our power not to make a judgment about something, and so not disturb our minds, for nothing in itself possesses the power to form our judgments. And in the case of superior things like stars, we discover a kind of unity and separation. The higher we rise on the scale of being, the easier it is to discern a connection even among things separated by vast distances. Everything in any way beautiful has its beauty of itself, inherent and self-sufficient. Praise is no part of it. At any rate, praise does not make anything better or worse. This applies even to the popular conception of beauty, as in material things or works of art. So does the truly beautiful need anything beyond itself. No more than law, no more than truth, no more than kindness or integrity. Which of these things derives its beauty from praise, or withers under criticism? Does an emerald lose its quality if it is not praised? And what of gold, ivory, purple, a lyre, a dagger, a flower, a bush? When men are inhuman, take care not to feel towards them as they do towards other humans. It is my bad luck that this has happened to me. No, you should rather say, it is my good luck that, although this has happened to me, I can bear it without pain, neither crushed by the present nor fearful of the future, because such a thing could have happened to any man, but not every man could have borne it without pain. So why see more misfortune in the event than good fortune in your ability to bear it? Everything is banal in experience, fleeting in duration, sordid in content. In all respects, the same today as generations now dead and buried have found it to be. All of us are creatures of the day, the rememberer and the remembered alike. All is ephemeral, both memory and the object of memory. The time is at hand when you will have forgotten everything, and the time is at hand when all will have forgotten you. Always reflect that soon you will be no one and nowhere. The time of a man's life is as a point, the substance of it ever flowing, the sense obscure, and the whole composition of the body tending to corruption. His soul is restless, fortune uncertain, and fame doubtful. To be brief, as a stream so are all things belonging to the body. As a dream, or as a smoke, so are all that belong unto the soul. Our life is a warfare and a mere pilgrimage. Fame after life is no better than oblivion. What is it then that will adhere and follow? Only one thing, philosophy. And philosophy doth consist in this, for a man to preserve that spirit which is within him, from all manner of contumelies and injuries, and above all pains or pleasures, never to do anything either rashly, or feignedly, or hypocritically, only to depend from himself, and his own proper actions, all things that happen unto him to embrace contentedly, as coming from him from whom he himself also came, and above all things, with all meekness and a calm cheerfulness, to expect death, as being nothing else but the resolution of those elements, of which every creature is composed. And if the elements themselves suffer nothing by their perpetual conversion of one into another, that dissolution and alteration, which is so common unto all, why should it be feared by any? Is not this according to nature? But nothing that is according to nature can be evil. Our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or our dispositions, because we can accommodate and adapt. The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impeding to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Look to nothing, not even for a moment, except to reason. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. To refrain from imitation is the best revenge. Soon, you will have forgotten everything. Soon, everybody will have forgotten you. We are the other of the other. Will any man despise me? Let him see to it. But I will see to it that I may not be found doing or saying anything that deserves to be despised. The world is mere change, in this life, opinion. It is a ridiculous thing for a man not to fly from his own badness, which is indeed possible, but to fly from other men's badness, which is impossible. Everything that exists is in a manner the seed of that which will be. For outward show is a wonderful perverter of the reason. Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand and ask, why is this so unbearable? Why can't I endure it? You'll be embarrassed to answer. Then remind yourself that past and future have no power over you. Only the present, and even that can be minimized. Just mark off its limits. The best revenge is not to do as they do. Our inward power, when it obeys nature, reacts to events by accommodating itself to what it faces, to what is possible. It needs no specific material. It pursues its own aims as circumstances allow. It turns obstacles into fuel, as a fire overwhelms what would have quenched a lamp. What's thrown on top of the conflagration is absorbed, consumed by it, and makes it burn still higher. Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up, if thou wilt ever dig. In the human lifetime is but an instant, and the substance of it a flux, and the perception dull, and the composition of the whole body subject to putrefaction, and the soul a whirl, and fortune hard to divine, and fame a thing devoid of certainty. And to say all in a word, everything that belongs to the body is a stream, and what belongs to the soul is a dream and vapor, and life is a warfare and a stranger's sojourn, and after fame is oblivion. What then can guide a man? One thing and only one, philosophy. The honest and good man ought to be exactly like a man who smells strong, so that the bystander as soon as he comes near him must smell whether he chooses or not. In a sense, people are our proper occupation. Our job is to do them good and put up with them. But when they obstruct our proper tasks, they become irrelevant to us like sun, wind, animals. Our actions may be impeded by them, but there can be no impeding our intentions or our dispositions, because we can accommodate and adapt. The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In everything that you do, pause and ask yourself if death is a dreadful thing because it deprives you of this. Think of the universal substance, of which thou has a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to thee, and of that which is fixed by destiny, and how small a part of it thou art. To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. Kindness is invincible. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of, if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm. But it's nicer here. So you were born to feel nice, instead of doing things and experiencing them. Don't you see the plants, the birds, the ants and spiders and bees going about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can? And you're not willing to do your job as a human being. Why aren't you running to do what your nature demands? But we have to sleep sometime. Agreed. But nature set a limit on that, as it did on eating and drinking. And you're over the limit. You've had more than enough of that, but not of working. There you're still below your quota. You don't love yourself enough, or you'd love your nature too, and what it demands of you. People who love what they do wear themselves down doing it. They even forget to wash or eat. Do you have less respect for your own nature than the engraver does for engraving, the dancer for the dance, the miser for money, or the social climber for status? When they're really possessed by what they do, they'd rather stop eating and sleeping than give up practicing their arts. Is helping others less valuable to you, not worth your effort? Whatever time you choose is the right time, not late, not early. Today I escaped all circumstance, or rather I cast out all circumstance, for it was not outside me, but within my judgments. Be your own master, and look at things as a man, as a human being, as a citizen, as a mortal creature. How good it is when you have roast meat or such like foods before you, to impress on your mind that this is the dead body of a fish, this is the dead body of a bird or pig, and again, that the Falernian wine is the mere juice of grapes, and your purple-edged robe simply the hair of a sheep soaked in shellfish blood, and in sexual intercourse that it is no more than the friction of a membrane and a spurt of mucus ejected. How good these perceptions are at getting to the heart of the real thing and penetrating through it, so you can see it for what it is. This should be your practice throughout all your life. When things have such a plausible appearance, show them naked, see their shoddiness, strip away their own boastful account of themselves. Vanity is the greatest seducer of reason. When you are most convinced that your work is important, that is when you are most under its spell. The sexual embrace can only be compared with music and with prayer. He is so rich, he has no room to shit. We must make haste then, not only because we are daily nearer to death, but also because the conception of things and the understanding of them cease first. The gods either have power or they have not. If they have not, why pray to them? If they have, then instead of praying to be granted or spared such and such a thing, why not rather pray to be delivered from dreading it, or lusting for it, or grieving over it? Clearly, if they can help a man at all, they can help him in this way. You will say, perhaps, but all that is something they have put in my own power. Then surely it were better to use your power and be a free man, than to hanker like a slave and a beggar for something that is not in your power. Besides, who told you the gods never lend their aid even towards things that do lie in our own power? Begin praying in this way, and you will see. Where another man prays, grant that I may possess this woman, let your own prayer be, grant that I may not lust to possess her. Where he prays, grant me to be rid of such and such a one, you pray, take from me my desire to be rid of him. Where he begs, spare me the loss of my precious child, beg rather to be delivered from the terror of losing him. In short, give your petitions a turn in this direction, and see what comes. Nothing is more scandalous than a man that is proud of his humility. When you run up against someone else's shamelessness, ask yourself this: is a world without shamelessness possible? No. Then don't ask the impossible. There have to be shameless people in the world. This is one of them. The same for someone vicious or untrustworthy, or with any other defect. Remembering that the whole world class has to exist will make you more tolerant of its members. That which has died falls not out of the universe. If it stays here, it also changes here and is dissolved into its proper pots, which are elements of the universe and of thyself. And these two change, and they murmur not. Failure to read what is happening in another's soul is not easily seen as a cause of unhappiness, but those who fail to attend the motions of their own soul are necessarily unhappy. Frequently consider the connection of all things in the universe. Reflect upon the multitude of bodily and mental events taking place in the same brief time, simultaneously in every one of us, and so you will not be surprised that many more events, or rather all things that come to pass, exist simultaneously in the one and entire unity, which we call the universe. We should not say I am an Athenian or I am a Roman, but I am a citizen of the universe. How soon will time cover all things? If something is difficult for you to accomplish, do not then think it impossible for any human being. Rather, if it is humanly possible and corresponds to human nature, knows that it is attainable by you as well. If any man is able to convince me and show me that I do not think or act right, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth by which no man was ever injured, but he is injured who abides in his error and ignorance. Accustom yourself not to be disregarding of what someone else has to say. As far as possible, enter into the mind of the speaker. I can control my thoughts as necessary. Then how can I be troubled? What is outside my mind means nothing to it. Absorb that lesson, and your feet stand firm. In the morning, when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present: I am rising to the work of a human being. Why then am I dissatisfied if I am going to do the things for which I exist and for which I was brought into the world? Or have I been made for this, to lie in the bedclothes and keep myself warm? But this is more pleasant. Dost thou exist then to take thy pleasure, and not at all for action or exertion? Dost thou not see the little plants, the little birds, the ants, the spiders, the bees working together to put in order their several parts of the universe? And art thou unwilling to do the work of a human being? And dost thou not make haste to do that which is according to thy nature? But it is necessary to take rest also. It is necessary. However, nature has fixed bounds to this too. She has fixed bounds to eating and drinking, and yet thou goest beyond these bounds, beyond what is sufficient. Yet in thy acts it is not so, but thou stoppest short of what thou canst do. So thou lovest not thyself, for if thou didst, thou wouldst love thy nature and her will. But those who love their several arts exhaust themselves in working at them unwashed and without food. But thou valuest thy own nature less than the turner values the turning art, or the dancer the dancing art, or the lover of money values his money, or the vainglorious man his little glory. And such men, when they have a violent affection to a thing, choose neither to eat nor to sleep rather than to perfect the things which they care for. But are the acts which concern society more vile in thy eyes and less worthy of thy labor? Whatever is in any way beautiful hath its source of beauty in itself, and is complete in itself. Praise forms no part of it. So it is none the worse nor the better for being praised. In an expression of true gratitude, sadness is conspicuous only by its absence. Anything in any way beautiful derives its beauty from itself and asks nothing beyond itself. Praise is no part of it, for nothing is made worse or better by praise. Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after, and the truth never harmed anyone. What harms us is to persist in self-deceit and ignorance. Be like a rocky promontory against which the restless surf continually pounds. It stands fast while the churning sea is lulled to sleep at its feet. I hear you say, how unlucky that this should happen to me. Not at all. Say instead, how lucky that I am not broken by what has happened and am not afraid of what is about to happen. The same blow might have struck anyone, but not many would have absorbed it without capitulation or complaint. Not to waste time on nonsense. Not to be taken in by conjurers and hoodoo artists with their talk about incantations and exorcism and all the rest of it. Not to be obsessed with quail fighting or other crazes like that. That all is as thinking makes it so, and you control your thinking. So remove your judgments whenever you wish, and then there is calm as the sailor rounding the cape finds smooth water and the welcome of a waveless bay. The man of ambition thinks to find his good in the operations of others, the man of pleasure in his own sensations, but the man of understanding in his own actions. Life is a warfare and a stranger's sojourn, and after fame is oblivion. Even if you're going to live 3,000 more years, or 10 times that, remember, you cannot lose another life than the one you're living now, or live another one than the one you're losing. The longest amounts to the same as the shortest. The present is the same for everyone. Its loss is the same for everyone. and it should be clear that a brief instant is all that is lost, for you can't lose either the past or the future. How could you lose what you don't have? Be cheerful also, and seek not external help nor the tranquility which others give. A man then must stand erect, not be kept erect by others. Do the things external which fall upon the distract thee. Give thyself time to learn something new and good, and cease to be whirled around. Your life is what your thoughts make it. Frightened of change, but what can exist without it? What's closer to nature's heart? Can you take a hot bath and leave the firewood as it was? Eat food without transforming it? Can any vital process take place without something being changed? Can't you see? It's just the same with you and just as vital to nature. To read with diligence, not to rest satisfied with a light and superficial knowledge, nor quickly to assent to things commonly spoken. It's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They are inescapable. Just try to escape your own. Live every day as if they last. Objective judgment, now, at this very moment. Unselfish action, now, at this very moment. Willing acceptance now, at this very moment of all external events. That's all you need. Does the emerald lose its beauty for lack of admiration? Retire into thyself. The rational principle which rules has this nature, that it is content with itself when it does what is just, and so secures tranquility. True understanding is to see the events of life in this way. You are here for my benefit, though rumor paints you otherwise. And everything is turned to one's advantage when he greets a situation like this. You are the very thing I was looking for. Truly, whatever arises in life is the right material to bring about your growth and the growth of those around you. This, in a word, is art, and this art called life is a practice suitable to both men and gods. Everything contains some special purpose and a hidden blessing. What then could be strange or arduous when all of life is here to greet you like an old and faithful friend? People look for retreats for themselves, in the country, by the coast, or in the hills. There is nowhere that a person can find a more peaceful and trouble-free retreat than in his own mind. So constantly give yourself this retreat, and renew yourself. Hour by hour resolve firmly to do what comes to hand with dignity, and with humanity, independence, and justice. Allow your mind freedom from all other considerations. This you can do if you will approach each action as though it were your last, dismissing the desire to create an impression, the admiration of self, the discontent with your lot. See how little man needs to master, for his days to flow on in quietness and piety. He has but to observe these few counsels, and the gods will ask nothing more. Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. This thing, what is it in itself, in its own constitution? What is its substance and material? A man's life is dyed the color of his imagination. Death hangs over thee. While thou livest, while it is in thy power, be good. From my great-grandfather, not to have attended schools for the public, to have had good teachers at home, and to realize that this is the sort of thing on which one should spend lavishly. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? If you do the task before you always adhering to strict reason with zeal and energy and yet with humanity, disregarding all lesser ends and keeping the divinity within you pure and upright, as though you were even now faced with its recall if you hold steadily to this, staying for nothing and shrinking from nothing, only seeking in each passing action a conformity with nature, and in each word an utterance of fearless truthfulness, then the good life shall be yours. And from this course no man has the power to hold you back. Whether you are shivering with cold or too hot, sleepy or wide awake, spoken well of or badly, dying, or doing anything else, do not let it interfere with doing what is right, for whatever causes us to die is also one of life's processes. Even for this, nothing is required of us than to accomplish well the task at hand. To live happily is an inward power of the soul. In comparing sins the way people do, Theophrastus says that the ones committed out of desire are worse than the ones committed out of anger, which is good philosophy. The angry man seems to turn his back on reason out of a kind of pain, an inner convulsion, but the man motivated by desire, who is mastered by pleasure, seems somehow more self-indulgent, less manly in his sins. Theophrastus is right, and philosophically sound, to say that the sin committed out of pleasure deserves a harsher rebuke than the one committed out of pain. The angry man is more like a victim of wrongdoing, provoked by pain to anger. The other man rushes into wrongdoing on his own, moved to action by desire. Make for thyself a definition or description of the thing which is presented to thee, so as to see distinctly what kind of a thing it is in its substance, in its nudity, in its complete entirety, and tell thyself its proper name, and the names of the things of which it has been compounded, and into which it will be resolved. For nothing is so productive of elevation of mind as to be able to examine methodically and truly every object which is presented to thee in life, and always to look at things so as to see at the same time what kind of universe this is, and what kind of use everything performs in it, and what value everything has with reference to the whole, and what with reference to man, who is a citizen of the highest city, of which all other cities are like families. What each thing is, and of what it is composed, and how long it is the nature of this thing to endure which now makes an impression on me, and what virtue I have need of with respect to it, such as gentleness, manlines, truth, fidelity, simplicity, contentment, and the rest. If thou workest at that which is before thee, following right reason seriously, vigorously, calmly, without allowing anything else to distract thee, but keeping thy divine part pure, as if thou shouldst be bound to give it back immediately. If thou holdest to this, expecting nothing, fearing nothing, but satisfied with thy present activity according to nature, and with heroic truth in every word and sound which thou utterest, thou wilt live happy, and there is no man who is able to prevent this. A man's greatness lies not in wealth and station, as the vulgar believe, not yet in his intellectual capacity, which is often associated with the meanest moral character, the most abject servility to those in high places and arrogance to the poor and lowly. But a man's true greatness lies in the consciousness of an honest purpose in life, founded on a just estimate of himself and everything else, on frequent self-examination, and a steady obedience to the rule which he knows to be right, without troubling himself, as the emperor says he should not, about what others may think or say, or whether they do or do not do that which he thinks and says and does. Love the art, poor as it may be, that thou hast learned, and be content with it, and pass through the rest of life like one who has entrusted to the gods with his whole soul all that he has, making thyself neither the tyrant nor the slave of any man. Thou sayest, men cannot admire the sharpness of thy wits. Be it so, but there are many other things of which thou canst not say, I am not formed for them by nature. Show those qualities then which are altogether in thy power, sincerity, gravity, endurance of labor, aversion to pleasure, contentment with thy portion and with few things, benevolence, frankness, no love of superfluity, freedom from trifling magnanimity. Dost thou not see how many qualities thou art immediately able to exhibit, in which there is no excuse of natural incapacity and unfitness, and yet thou still remainest voluntarily below the mark? Or art thou compelled through being defectively furnished by nature to murmur, and to be stingy, and to flatter, and to find fault with thy poor body, and to try to please men, and to make great display, and to be so restless in thy mind? No, by the gods, but thou mightest have been delivered from these things long ago. Only if in truth thou canst be charged with being rather slow and dull of comprehension, thou must exert thyself about this also, not neglecting it nor yet taking pleasure in thy dullness. People try to get away from it all to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You always wish that you could too, which is idiotic. You can get away from it any time you like, by going within. Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul, especially if you have other things to rely on. An instant's recollection, and there it is, complete tranquility. And by tranquility I mean a kind of harmony. So keep getting away from it all like that. Renew yourself, but keep it brief and basic. A quick visit should be enough to ward off all, and send you back ready to face what awaits you. What's there to complain about? People's misbehavior. But take into consideration that rational beings exist for one another, that doing what's right sometimes requires patience, that no one does the wrong thing deliberately. In the number of people who have feuded and envied and hated and fought and died and been buried. And keep your mouth shut. Or are you complaining about the things the world assigns you? But consider the two options, providence or atoms, and all the arguments for seeing the world as a city. Or is it your body? Keep in mind that when the mind detaches itself and realizes its own nature, it no longer has anything to do with ordinary life, the rough and the smooth, either one. And remember all you've been taught and accepted about pain and pleasure. Or is it your reputation that's bothering you? But look at how soon we're all forgotten. The abyss of endless time that swallows it all. The emptiness of all those applauding hands. The people who praise us, how capricious they are, how arbitrary. In the tiny region in which it all takes place, the whole earth a point in space and most of it uninhabited. How many people there will be to admire you and who they are. So keep this refuge in mind, the back roads of yourself. Above all, no strain and no stress. Be straightforward. Look at things like a man, like a human being, like a citizen, like a mortal. And among the things you turn to, these two, that things have no hold on the soul. They stand there unmoving, outside it. Disturbance comes only from within, from our own perceptions. That everything you see will soon alter and cease to exist. Think of how many changes you've already seen. The world is nothing but change. Our life is only perception. Don't look down on death, but welcome it. It too is one of the things required by nature. Like youth and old age, like growth and maturity, like a new set of teeth, a beard, the first gray hair, like sex and pregnancy and childbirth, like all the other physical changes at each stage of life, our dissolution is no different. So this is how a thoughtful person should await death, not with indifference, not with impatience, not with disdain, but simply viewing it as one of the things that happen to us. Now you anticipate the child's emergence from its mother's womb. That's how you should await the hour when your soul will emerge from its compartment. Or perhaps you need some tidy aphorism to tuck away in the back of your mind. Well, consider two things that should reconcile you to death: the nature of the things you leave behind you, and the kind of people you'll no longer be mixed up with. There's no need to feel resentment toward them. In fact, you should look out for their well-being and be gentle with them, but keep in mind that everything you believe is meaningless to those you leave behind, because that's all that could restrain us. If anything, could the only thing that could make us want to stay here. The chance to live with those who share our vision. But now, look how tiring it is, this cacophony we live in. Enough to make you say to death, "Come quickly." before I start to forget myself like them. Human life, duration, momentary, nature, changeable, perception, dim, condition of body, decaying, soul, spinning around, fortune, unpredictable, lasting fame, uncertain. Sum up, the body and its parts are a river, the soul a dream and mist, life is warfare and a journey far from home, lasting reputation is oblivion. Then what can guide us? Only philosophy, which means making sure that the power within stays safe and free from assault, superior to pleasure and pain, doing nothing randomly or dishonestly and with imposture, not dependent on anyone else's doing something or not doing it, and making sure that it accepts what happens and what it is dealt as coming from the same place it came from, and above all, that it accepts death in a cheerful spirit, as nothing but the dissolution of the elements from which each living thing is composed. If it doesn't hurt the individual elements to change continually into one another, why are people afraid of all of them changing and separating? It's a natural thing, and nothing natural is evil. Say to yourself first thing in the morning, today I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, aggressive, treacherous, malicious, unsocial. All this has afflicted them through their ignorance of true good and evil. But I have that the nature of good is what is right, and the nature of evil what is wrong. And I reflected that the nature of the offender himself is akin to my own, not a kinship of blood or seed, but a sharing in the same mind, the same fragment of divinity. Therefore I cannot be harmed by any of them, as none will infect me with their wrong, nor can I be angry with my kinsman or hate him. We were born for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. So to work in opposition to one another is against nature, and anger or rejection is opposition. People who labor all their lives but have no purpose to direct every thought and impulse toward are wasting their time even when hard at work. Know where you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul, especially. What am I but a little flesh, a little breath, and the thinking part that rules the whole? If you set yourself to your present task along the path of true reason, with all determination, vigor, and goodwill, if you admit no distraction, but keep your own divinity pure and standing strong as if you had to surrender it right now, if you grapple this to you, expecting nothing, shirking nothing, but self-content with each present action taken in accordance with nature and a heroic truthfulness in all that you say and mean, then you will lead a good life, and nobody is able to stop you. Take away thy opinion, and then there is taken away the complaint, I have been harmed. Take away the complaint, I have been harmed, and the harm is taken away. That which does not make a man worse than he was, also does not make his life worse, nor does it harm him either from without or from within. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. To live a good life, we have the potential for it. If we can learn to be indifferent to what makes no difference. This is how we learn, by looking at each thing, both the parts and the whole, keeping in mind that none of them can dictate how we perceive it. They don't impose themselves on us. They hover before us, unmoving. It is we who generate the judgments, inscribing them on ourselves. And we don't have to. We could leave the page blank, and if a mark slips through, erase it instantly. Remember how brief is the attentiveness required, and then our lives will end. And why is it so hard when things go against you? If it's imposed by nature, accept it gladly and stop fighting it. And if not, work out what your own nature requires and aim at that, even if it brings you no glory. None of us is forbidden to pursue our own good. When you start to lose your temper, remember, there's nothing manly about rage. It's courtesy and kindness that define a human being and a man. That's who possesses strength and nerves and guts, not the angry whiners. To react like that brings you closer to impassivity and so to strength. Pain is the opposite of strength, and so is anger. Both are things we suffer from and yield to. The fencer's weapon is picked up and put down again. The boxer's is part of him. All he has to do is clench his fist. Everything is only for a day, both that which remembers and that which is remembered. A limit of time is fixed for thee, which if thou dost not use for clearing away the clouds from thy mind, it will go and thou wilt go, and it will never return. We ought to consider not only that our life is daily wasting away and a smaller part of it is left, but also that if a man should live longer, it is quite uncertain whether the understanding will still continue sufficient for the comprehension of things and retain the power of contemplation that strives to acquire the knowledge of the divine and the human. For if he shall begin to fall into dotage, perspiration, and nutrition, and imagination, and appetite, and whatever else there is of the kind will not fail, but the power of making use of ourselves, and filling up the measure of our duty, and clearly separating all appearances, and considering whether a man should now depart from life, and whatever else of the kind absolutely requires a disciplined reason, all this is already extinguished. We must make haste then, not only because we are daily nearer to death, but also because the conception of things and the understanding of them cease first. Every hour be firmly resolved to accomplish the work at hand with fitting and unaffected dignity, goodwill, freedom, justice. Banish from your thoughts all other considerations. This is possible if you perform each act as if it were your last, rejecting every frivolous distraction, every denial of the rule of reason, every pretentious gesture, vain show, and whining complaint against the decrees of fate. Do you see what little is required of a man to live a well-tempered and God-fearing life? Obey these precepts, and the gods will ask nothing more. The present moment is the only thing of which anyone can be deprived, at least if this is the only thing he has and he cannot lose what he has not got. How much time he saves who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks. How cruel to forbid people to want what they think is good for them, and yet that's just what you won't let them do when you get angry at their misbehavior. They're drawn toward what they think is good for them, but it's not good for them. Then show them that, prove it to them, instead of losing your temper. Your three components, body, breath, mind. Two are yours and trust. To the third alone you have clear title. If you can cut yourself your mind free of what other people do and say, of what you've said or done, of the things that you're afraid will happen, the impositions of the body that contains you and the breath within, and what the whirling chaos sweeps in from outside, so that the mind is freed from fate, brought to clarity, and lives life on its own recognizance, doing what's right, accepting what happens, and speaking the truth. If you can cut free of impressions that cling to the mind, free of the future and the past, can make yourself, as Empedocles says, a sphere rejoicing in its perfect stillness, and concentrate on living what can be lived, which means the present. Then you can spend the time you have left in tranquility, and in kindness, and at peace with the spirit within you. We should remember that even nature's inadvertence has its own charm, its own attractiveness. The way loaves of bread split open on top in the oven, the ridges are just byproducts of the baking, and yet pleasing, somehow. They arouse our appetite without our knowing why. Or how ripe figs begin to burst, and olives on the point of falling. The shadow of decay gives them a peculiar beauty. Stalks of wheat bending under their own weight. The furrowed brow of the lion, flecks of foam on the boar's mouth, and other things. If you look at them in isolation, there's nothing beautiful about them, and yet by supplementing nature they enrich it and draw us in. And anyone with a feeling for nature, a deeper sensitivity, will find it all gives pleasure, even what seems inadvertent. He'll find the jaws of live animals as beautiful as painted ones or sculptures. He'll look calmly at the distinct beauty of old age in men, women, and at the loveliness of children, and other things like that will call out to him constantly, things unnoticed by others, things seen only by those at home with nature and its works. In the morning when thou risest unwillingly, let this thought be present: I am rising to the work of a human being. Why then am I dissatisfied if I am going to do the things for which I exist and for which I was brought into the world? Keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come. Existence flows past us like a river. The what is in constant flux, the why has 1,000 variations. Nothing is stable, not even what's right here. The infinity of past and future gapes before us, a chasm whose depths we cannot see. So it would take an idiot to feel self-importance or distress, or any indignation, either, as if the things that irritate us lasted. So here is a rule to remember in future: when anything tempts you to feel bitter, not, "This is a misfortune," but to bear this worthily is good fortune. Even the least of our activities ought to have some end in view. Take the shortest route, the one that nature planned, to speak and act in the healthiest way. Do that, and be free of pain and stress, free of all calculation and pretension. Does the emerald lose its beauty for lack of admiration? Does gold, ivory, or purple, a lyre or a dagger, a rosebud or a sapling? The Stoic discovers the model for his virtuous conduct in studying the laws of nature. Just as each object, plant, and animal serves its fated role in the larger order, so the human strives to steer his actions in accordance with his unique power, reason, his inner mirror of the logos that governs the universe. It is in our power to have no opinion about a thing and not to be disturbed in our soul, for things themselves have no natural power to form our judgments. If you're honest and straightforward and mean well, it should show in your eyes. It should be unmistakable. No matter what anyone says or does, my task is to be good. You have the power to strip away many superfluous troubles located wholly in your judgment, and to possess a large room for yourself, embracing in thought the whole cosmos, to consider everlasting time, to think of the rapid change in the parts of each thing, of how short it is from birth until dissolution, and how the void before birth and that after dissolution are equally infinite. Whatever this is that I am, it is flesh and a little spirit and an intelligence. Throw away your books. Stop letting yourself be distracted. That is not allowed. Instead, as if you were dying right now, despise your flesh. A mess of blood, pieces of bone, a woven tangle of nerves, veins, arteries. Consider what the spirit is: air, and ever the same air, but vomited out and gulped in again every instant. Finally, the intelligence. Think of it this way: you are an old man. Stop allowing your mind to be a slave, to be jerked about by selfish impulses, to kick against fate in the present, and to mistrust the future. And so accept everything that happens, even if it is disagreeable, because it leads to this, to the health of the universe and to the prosperity and felicity of Zeus. Live every day as if thy last. This you must always bear in mind: what is the nature of the whole, and what is my nature, and how this is related to that, and what kind of a part it is of what kind of a whole. and that there is no one who hinders you from always doing and saying the things that conform to the nature of which you are a part. I do not regard a man as poor, if the little which remains is enough for him. That kindness is invincible, provided it's sincere, not ironic or an act. What can even the most vicious person do if you keep treating him with kindness and gently set him straight, if you get the chance correcting him cheerfully at the exact moment that he's trying to do you harm? No, no, my friend, that isn't what we're here for. It isn't me who's harmed by that, it's you. Nothing that goes on in anyone else's mind can harm you, nor can the shifts and changes in the world around you. Then where is harm to be found? In your capacity to see it. Stop doing that and everything will be fine. Let the part of you that makes the judgment keep quiet even if the body it's attached to is stabbed or burnt, or stinking with pus, or consumed by cancer. Or to put it another way, it needs to realize that what happens to everyone, bad and good alike, is neither good nor bad. In a sense, people are our proper occupation. Our job is to do them good and put up with them. So other people hurt me. That's their problem. Their character and actions are not mine. You have to assemble your life yourself, action by action, and be satisfied if each one achieves its goal, as far as it can. No one can keep that from happening. But there are external obstacles, not to behaving with justice, self-control, and good sense. Well, but perhaps to some more concrete action. But if you accept the obstacle and work with what you're given, an alternative will present itself, another piece of what you're trying to assemble, action by action. I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. All these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil. But I, who have seen the nature of the good, that it is beautiful, and of the bad, that it is ugly, and the nature of him who does wrong, that it is akin to me, not only of the same blood or seed, but that it participates in the same intelligence and the same portion of the divinity, I can neither be injured by any of them, for no one can fix on me what is ugly, nor can I be angry with my kinsman, nor hate him. For we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. To act against one another then is contrary to nature, and it is acting against one another to be vexed and to turn away. Marcus Aurelius, too, wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Seneca suggested that each night we tell ourselves that you may not wake up tomorrow, and that we greet every morning with the reminder that you may not sleep again. All of these practices are meant to help us treat our lives and each other as the precious gifts they are. Do, soul, do. Don't waste the rest of your time here worrying about other people unless it affects the common good. It will keep you from doing anything useful. You'll be too preoccupied with what so and so is doing, and why, and what they're saying, and what they're thinking, and what they're up to, and all the other things that throw you off and keep you from focusing on your own mind. If you do the job in a principled way, with diligence, energy, and patience, if you keep yourself free of distractions, and keep the spirit inside you undamaged as if you might have to give it back at any moment, if you can embrace this without fear or expectation, can find fulfillment in what you're doing now, as nature intended, and in superhuman truthfulness every word, every utterance, then your life will be happy. Everything transitory, the knower and the known. For nothing is so productive of elevation of mind as to be able to examine methodically and truly every object which is presented to thee in life, and always to look at things so as to see at the same time what kind of universe this is, and what kind of use everything performs in it, and what value everything has with reference to the whole, and what with reference to man, who is a citizen of the highest city, of which all other cities are like families. What each thing is, and of what it is composed, and how long it is the nature of this thing to endure, which now makes an impression on me, and what virtue I have need of with respect to it, such as gentleness, manlines, truth, fidelity, simplicity, contentment, and the rest. Wherefore, on every occasion a man should say, "This comes from God," and this is according to the apportionment and spinning of the thread of destiny, and such like coincidence and chance. And this is from one of the same stock, and a kinsman and partner, one who knows not however what is according to his nature. But I know, for this reason, I behave towards him according to the natural law of fellowship with benevolence and justice. Always have these two principles in readiness. First, to do only what the reason inherent in kingly and judicial power prescribes for the benefit of mankind. Second, to change your ground, if in fact there is someone to correct and guide you away from some notion. The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good, and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own, not of the same blood or birth, but the same mind, and possessing a share of the divine, and so none of them can hurt me. Every hour make up thy mind sturdily as a Roman and a man to do what thou hast in hand with scrupulous and unaffected dignity and love of thy kind, and independence and justice, and to give thyself rest from all other impressions. And thou wilt give thyself this, if thou dost execute every act of thy life as though it were thy last, divesting thyself of all aimlessness and all passionate antipathy to the convictions of reason, and all hypocrisy and self-love and dissatisfaction with thy allotted share. Thou seest how few are the things, by mastering which a man may lead a life of tranquility and godlikeness. For the gods also will ask no more from him who keeps these precepts. Not easily is a man found to be unhappy by reason of his not regarding what is going on in another man's soul, but those who do not attend closely to the motions of their own souls must inevitably be unhappy. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, in so far as it stands ready against the accidental and the unforeseen and is not apt to fall. How to act, and never under compulsion, out of selfishness, without forethought, with misgivings. Don't gussy up your thoughts. No surplus words or unnecessary actions. Let the spirit in you represent a man, an adult, a citizen, a Roman, a ruler, taking up his post like a soldier and patiently awaiting his recall from life, needing no oath or witness, cheerfulness, without requiring other people's help, or serenity supplied by others. Toast and up straight, not straightened. The properties of the rational soul are these: it sees itself, dissects itself, molds itself to its own will, itself reaps its own fruits, whereas the fruits of the vegetable kingdom and the corresponding produce of animals are reaped by others. It wins to its own goal wherever the bounds of life be set. In dancing and acting and such like arts, if any break occurs, the whole action is rendered imperfect. But the rational soul in every part, and wheresoever taken, shows the work set before it fulfilled and all sufficient for itself, so that it can say, "I have to the full what is my own." What follows coheres with what went before, not like a random catalogue whose order is imposed upon it arbitrarily, but logically connected. And just as what exists is ordered and harmonious, what comes into being betrays an order too, not a mere sequence, but an astonishing concordance. All men suffer, but not all men pity themselves. Where is the harm or surprise in the ignorant behaving as the ignorant do? Be like a headland of rock on which the waves break incessantly, but it stands fast, and around it the seething of the waters sinks to rest. Unlucky am I that this has befallen me. No, but rather, lucky am I that though this has befallen me, yet am I still unhurt, neither crushed by the present or dreading the future. Forget not in future, when anything would lead you to feel hurt, to take your stand upon this axiom: this is no misfortune, but to bear it nobly is good fortune. In a little while you too will close your eyes, and soon there will be others mourning the man who buries you. The pride that prides itself on freedom from pride is the hardest of all to bear. Unceasingly contemplate the generation of all things through change, and accustom thyself to the thought that the nature of the universe delights above all in changing the things that exist and making new ones of the same pattern. When forced, as it seems, by thine environment to be utterly disquieted, return with all speed into thyself, staying in discord no longer than thou must. By constant recurrence to the harmony, thou wilt gain more command over it. Time was that wherever forsaken I was a man well portioned, but that man well portioned is he that has given himself a good portion, and good portions are good faces of the soul, good impulses, good actions. Make no difference in doing thy duty, whether thou art shivering or warm, drowsy or sleep satisfied, defamed or extolled, dying or anything else, for the act of dying too is one of the acts of life. So it is enough in this also to get the work in hand done well. If there were anything harmful on the other side of death, they would have made sure that the ability to avoid it was within you. If it doesn't harm your character, how can it harm your life? Nature would not have overlooked such dangers through failing to recognize them, or because it saw them but was powerless to prevent or correct them. Nor would it ever, through inability or incompetence, make such a mistake as to let good and bad things happen indiscriminately to good and bad alike. But death and life, success and failure, pain and pleasure, wealth and poverty, all these happen to good and bad alike, and they are neither noble nor shameful, and hence neither good nor bad. Nothing is more pathetic than people who run around in circles, delving into the things that lie beneath and conducting investigations into the souls of the people around them, never realizing that all you have to do is to be attentive to the power inside you and worship it sincerely. To worship it is to keep it from being muddied with turmoil and becoming aimless and dissatisfied with nature divine and human. Then what can guide us? Only philosophy, which means making sure that the power within stays safe and free from assault, superior to pleasure and pain, doing nothing randomly or dishonestly and with imposture, not dependent on anyone else's doing something or not doing it, and making sure that it accepts what happens and what it is dealt as coming from the same place it came from. Everything you're trying to reach by taking the long way around you could have right now, this moment. If you'd only stop thwarting your own attempts, if you'd only let go of the past, entrust the future to providence, and guide the present toward reverence. An arrow has one motion and the mind another. Even when pausing, even when weighing conclusions, the mind is moving forward toward its goal, to enter others' minds and let them enter yours. All things are drawn toward what is like them, if such a thing exists. All earthly things feel the earth's tug, all wet things flow together, and airy things as well, so they have to be forcibly prevented from mixing. Fire is naturally drawn upward by that higher fire, but ready to ignite at the slightest touch of other earthly flame. External things are not the problem. It's your assessment of them, which you can erase right now. That in reality it is not the acts men do that vex us, for they belong to the domain of their ruling reason, but the opinions we form of those acts. Eradicate these. Be ready to discard thy conclusion that the act in question is a calamity, and thine anger is at an end. How then eradicate these opinions? By realizing that no act of another debases us. For unless that alone which debases is evil, thou too must perforce do many a wrong thing and become a brigand or any sort of man. Bethink thee how much more grievous are the consequences of our anger and vexation at such actions, and are the acts themselves which arouse that anger and vexation. In reading and writing, thou must learn first to follow instruction before thou canst give it. Much more is this true of life. For neither can any wealth, however abundant, suffice for the incontinence of a tyranny, nor a bodyguard be strong enough to protect the ruler, unless he has first of all the good will of the governed. For those rulers complete a long course of sovereignty without danger who instill into the hearts of their subjects not fear by their cruelty, but love by their goodness. For it is not those who serve as slaves under compulsion, but those who are obedient from persuasion, that are above suspicion, and continue doing and being done by without any cloak of flattery, and never show restiveness unless driven to it by violence and outrage. And it is difficult to check and put a just limit to our desires when power is their minister. By giving my son then such advice, and bringing to his memory what he now hears with his own ears, you will render him both for yourselves and all mankind the best of kings, and you will do my memory the greatest of services, and thus alone be enabled to make it immortal. God, give me the patience to reconcile with what I am not able to change. Give me the strength to change what I can, and give me the wisdom to distinguish one from another. What of it then? You embarked, you set sail, and you made port. Go ashore now. It is to another life. Nothing is empty of the gods, even on that shore. A professional problem, O king, occupied me, and the mind, when so engaged, must not be detached from the prosecution of its inquiry. It is in our power to have no opinion about a thing, and not to be disturbed in our soul, for things themselves have no natural power to form our judgments. Imagine how much fun it will be to be physically invincible, to enter a sword fight unarmed, and to exit without a scratch, leaving your opponent frustrated and exhausted. When you become emotionally invincible, your opponent may be another person shelling out insults, your own inner critic, or simply the unexpected blows life deals to us all. Waste no time arguing what a good man should be one. Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. The cohesiveness and beauty that intelligence lends to the face, that's what the body needs. But it should come without effort.